Well, hi everybody. Thanks, Belle. It's nice to see all of you, and hope everyone is enjoying the summer. I heard everyone talking about the heat and I guess drought that we're all experiencing here. Um, Not sure how the weather is in Colorado now, but I'm guessing maybe a little more temperate than we've been experiencing. So in terms of, I think we can just lead off right now. With the first bullet point regarding the NP for pancreatic cancer. What I can do is provide a little bit of an update of our current NP program, and then maybe ask Dr. Weeks to talk a little bit more about some of the challenges that we have for in terms of expansion and sustainability of this program. So we have now been for some time have had a program. I can actually show you what it looks like. As I turn around right here, where we are giving at the time of new consultation an information package to patients identified by Allison and Lorraine. That looks like this. You can see that it's got some general information on the front. But when you open it, it's got some information that's generally helpful, including an overview of pancreatic cancer, supportive care, diet, and nutrition, as well as some access to social services and nutritional services at the MGH. With that is some information about the intake NP visit that Allison works on scheduling with Lorraine, where Lorraine then covers a number of topics, including but not limited to symptoms that we may not have had adequate time to address at the time of initial consultation. So issues like pain, weight loss, emotional support, things like that. And again, not because we don't want to address them, it's just that, as I'm sure all of you are aware, the amount of information that Dr. Weeks, Dr. Fernandez, and I give at that first meeting is like a semester's worth of biology and clinical medicine in 1 hour. And it's just overwhelming for patients to really hear more than that and to expect them to process more than that. So we do think that this separate visit is a really great time for patients to sort of catch their breath and say, wait, this is what's bothering me. And Lorraine can start connecting them to all the people they need to, or directly address a lot of the issues themselves, as well as just answer some logistical questions that they may have, since so many of our patients start with chemotherapy regarding, oh, this is what you're generally going to be able to expect from chemotherapy, and this is what they meant by a port, and things like that. And the feedback we've gotten from that program have been overwhelmingly positive. I think, though, that, and this is where I'm going to transition and hand this off to Colin. The problem is that that's a single visit with some follow-up points, but it's not like a full comprehensive navigator type model. It's an important piece and one that we're developing, that has developed well, but it's only a piece of a puzzle that was meant to be a doorstep into a broader role for a nurse practitioner program manager for pancreatic cancer. And we have continue to have some struggles finding the financial wherewithal to support that position. And Colin, why don't we use that maybe as a transition to you explaining what your vision is for this nurse practitioner, and where some of the barriers that you on our behalf have encountered.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what I think we are uniquely positioned to do as a program as a whole is we have incredible scientists and then this incredible physician team that you're seeing. And the goal was really to sort of bring those two groups together and really be able to take what we're learning in the lab, and then develop new therapies for patients. And I'll show you an example of some things that we're doing along those lines. But in this context, I think, so I used to be at University of Colorado, everybody knows that. And I think what was really important for me when I was there, and I sort of think we can do a little bit better here, sort of this patient facing kind of a program. And I think where the nurse practitioner led multidisciplinary clinic experience, what I see that does is it brings and this is very colloquial, but it brings this sort of familial sense to the program. There's a point of access. There's someone that these patients can count on. And in some respects, they can also navigate some of the sort of hurdles of trying to navigate a huge institution like MGH. And so we've been working diligently to try to make this happen. So the nurse practitioner who runs those programs at the University of Colorado has met with a number of individuals in series, and most recently met with the leadership of an NP program. So I think there is support for the program, sort of, I would say, generally speaking. I think the concern right now is just how do we fund that and support that. And I think some of the research initiatives that we are developing, I am working on a multi, what's called, what we have a program project grant that will help us with some infrastructure resources. Dr. Hong is actually working on a larger grant that would also potentially provide us some infrastructure support as well. And so I think, you know, with sort of these grant funding opportunities, I think we'll get there. And I think as all hospitals transition through this post-COVID time and trying to sort of rethink how they utilize their resources, you know, we'll get there eventually. But I'm optimistic that it's not. I mean, from talking to the leadership, everybody sees the value of the program. It's just how do we put the pieces together? So hopefully, in the very near future, we'll be able to sort of say that it's at least in place, or there's a person identified to start that process.
I have a question. What is the percentage of patients currently who have access to this pilot program? Is it like 5%, 2%, 20%?
For new patients, it's more than that. Allison, what's your estimate given what you see from the communications we have from New Patient Clinic?
I would say closer to 40 to 50%. I think if it's a week where we have a solid amount of candidates for it, we have to do in-state and typically not second opinions. We look for patients who are getting most of their care at MGH, so that way we can coordinate appointments. So if we have a week where we have 4 patients that are great candidates, I would say 2 of them at minimum end up being interested in that, pursue the visits with Lorraine.
End up being interested, or so you can accommodate everyone who wants to do this program. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if a patient seems like a good candidate, the physician, so it's either Dr. Hong or Dr. Wu, will approach them with the folder that he showed you and explain what we're doing and the importance of that. And so they'll take that home, and then I always follow up with a phone call and see if that's something that they do want to pursue. Some patients are feeling overwhelmed and they don't want extra visits. So sometimes they hold off until they start chemo, and then I follow up with them again, and at that point they're ready to do it. So it kind of depends on the patient, but I would say most of them are really excited about it.
That's great. That's okay.
Can I ask a question, Allison?
Yeah.
Did you say that if somebody is getting their treatment elsewhere and is interested in a second opinion, is that doable there or not?
We have not found that the patients who end up getting most of their care elsewhere are good fits, just because the visits with Lorraine allow for great continuity of care within MGH. So she's able to relay any sort of issues that she's seeing with their care team here. So if they're getting all of their care elsewhere, it can be a little bit difficult. We have had some patients who have gotten chemotherapy here and then they get radiation closer to home or vice versa. And those patients work out really well. So it kind of just depends on the level of involvement of their care at MGH.
And just out of curiosity, have you had to turn anybody away who's been interested in the program? Or is it more of a question of not having enough room to address those that need it and want it?
I don't think we've had to turn anyone away. It's more that we see patients that would be good that we see patients that would be good candidates, but if they live, you know, in New York or something like that, we can't offer it. So we don't offer it to patients that we know wouldn't be a fit for it. And a lot of the visits end up being virtual just because it's more convenient for patients. So it becomes a licensing issue to do those for out of state.
I have a question. Are those visits billed for, or are they more like kind of psychoeducation visits?
My understanding is that they're not billable. Ted, do you know?
They're not. So I think that Lorraine does bill for the first visit. And that's part of the sustainability of the model, but but that's why it also has to be completely discrete from being tied to an MD visit as well, which again does actually work because it's not, it's on a different day than the visits with us.
Thank
So
you.
I'll just add a little bit to this. So I often will see patients at the beginning, and then will not see them again until they're done with all their neoadjuvant treatment, right? Which is now the predominant model for care of pancreatic cancer. So obviously there are some patients I won't see because they progress. But the ones that I see, and of course it's a selected group because those patients are happy that there's now other options for their care. But I almost always get an unprompted comment of how wonderful their care was at MGH, right? So you get this thing that, I just want to tell you that, the doctors, the nurses during my infusion, the radiation, the people in the radiation, the technicians in the radiation, that there's still, thankfully, a culture at MGH where the patient comes first and where patients feel very good. But I also sometimes get at the beginning, because a lot of patients come and they're coming, I end up being the first contact, right? So they call my office, pancreatic cancer, we need a surgeon. So they come here. And so when I see them, I always leave my door open. I said, if something gets stuck in the beginning, give me a call. And I do find that there's a number of patients whose beginnings are very clunky, right? So the appointment for the port, the appointment for the casket, I didn't get a call back on what to do this. And the patients really are overwhelmed and their families are overwhelmed. And I find that through my office, we need to start to find to coordinate this. So the need for this nurse practitioner, I think, is real, right? That every patient, not the second opinions, Maureen, because the second opinions come and they just want us to validate what they're going to do somewhere else or not. And then, if they decide to come to MGH, I think we can handhold them for that. But the others, everybody should have a navigator. And I don't know if that's the best word to call them a navigator. They're professionals, they're nurse practitioners, but it's somebody who's sort of shepherding you through the whole process and to help. And I think this is a very valuable thing. Now, it's not just an issue of funding it, but also the issue of finding the right person or persons to do this. I'll tell you, right now, it's a big problem in healthcare. Finding nurses, there's openings everywhere. In the competition is brutal. And a lot of burnout from nurses during COVID, a lot of nurses who decided to step down from the whole profession are finding different models of care. Now, this may be attractive because it's a position that is, no evenings, no nights, no weekends. So some people may be attracted to that. But at the same time, it has to be somebody with very special personal qualities, right? Because it needs patience, it needs a lot of empathy, it needs knowledge because they need to build into all these things, it needs the connections of how to navigate the system. But I think this should continue to be one of the top priorities of this group, to convince the hospital, to convince, how to get the funds to ensure that we have a good position for this.
And do you feel like it's going to be really essential, just given the role in navigating MGH? I'm just curious if you feel that the person who's the right candidate is somebody who understands MGH already. I mean, I think that can be something you learn, but I'm just curious how much of an internal person might step into this role quicker and easier. Does that limit your
question? No question. Somebody who's internal to MGH will have an advantage, but somebody who's sharp is going to pick it up, with our guidance, because we will get involved in that, right? But it gets complex in this way. The shortages are not just in nursing, but administrative assistants, they're also leaving. They're leaving for, better pay somewhere else for other situations. And so your contact person in radiology, or your contact person in endoscopy, those things are changing all the time.
Yeah.
It is people who care, the ones who are going to make this happen. So the patients, I got shocked the other day, a patient needed endoscopic ultrasound. They said, sure, we can do it in 2 months. No, excuse me, we need to get this done next week, right? So you literally have to go through different channels, and you're going to get it done. But it's sort of a difference. I think healthcare is going through some transformation, and the experience of patients may suffer. And because of that, it would be great to have in line the right people to help this care.
And just to amplify what Carlos just said, the competition for a lot of our assistants, like as an example, he brought up our administrative assistants, are not other healthcare institutions. They're just other jobs. I remember when, as I'm sitting in my office, I can actually see the Encore building straight out my window here, across over in Everett. And they were paying so much more per hour than any MGH position that we were losing a ton of people to who were taking positions at the casino. So I think that this is a general healthcare issue right now, and that when there is a labor shortage, healthcare institutions lack a lot of the flexibility to start to competitively compete for those positions. This is not unique to MGH, and it's certainly not unique to those administrative positions. We're seeing it with our research coordinators. Across the board, there are just other industries that are willing to ramp up their hourly pay and outcompete the healthcare industry.
Is there anything we can do to help on these infrastructure support grants, or in any other way to help on the funding side of things? I think that, I think we all feel very strongly that this is such a critical component to what you all do in supporting the patients. Any ways that we can help, please let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, having your support is really important. I think, this is somewhat of a unique group of individuals supporting a program, and sort of a unique approach. So we're doing sort of multiple new things at one time, but your support is really important. And then, thinking about your own unique ways to help us move forward is also important. So we do truly appreciate your support. Yeah.
Ted.
Yep.
Yes.
Carol Whittemore. I feel like I've almost got a megaphone. I am so in favor of this program. I am 10 years out from my Whipple surgery. Thank you, Dr. Fernandez. I was #1 in Ted Hong's study. And so a lot of new things were used for me. But and David Ryan was my oncologist, but one of the most valuable connections I had was Teresa McDonald, who was the nurse practitioner who stepped with me and my family every single day. My daughter was out in Seattle. She came out for a month to take care of me. She had Teresa's phone number. At any time of the night or day. I can't say enough about how much value having that navigator helped me in a very difficult year of recovery. So I guess I was at the front end of you trying something like this, but now the benefit is just amazing for any other patients.
I agree.
So what is needed at this moment to bring someone like that in?
Colin, you're muted.
We've had conversations about developing a pilot project. I think we have to, be able to demonstrate sort of sustainability. I do believe, I think there's been a question within the institution, because this is sort of not the way we've historically done things, whether this is something that would be supported by all of the practitioners involved. And I think that's not a significant issue for me to, I think we're all on board with that at this point. So really, it also is a little bit, it's a change of culture for the nurse practitioner unit. And so I think there's some of that as well, right? Trying to, we mentioned earlier in this conversation about an MG insider versus outsider for MGH. And so I think as folks are getting around the sort of a different culture, different thought process around this issue, Cheryl McGee, who's the nurse practitioner at University of Colorado, Maureen knows very well. She's been amazing. She's met with us several times and different people at different times. And so I think right now it's really a matter of we need to sort of probably uniformly go to the leadership and say this is something we want to make happen, and then we have to sort of figure out a sustainable plan. I think if we're able to get some of these grants that we're talking about, that also will provide us both financial resources as well as I think political resources to sort of push this issue a little bit further.
So do you
So
see
the-
it's not
Go ahead.
happening? Do you see any pushback or people that would say it's not needed or shouldn't go forward?
So I think really it's a matter of, once again, I think the NP culture is a little bit different. So this is sort of a different approach to sort of the NP role. I think it's I would say that Cheryl, and she's very independent. She's been able to really develop an independent professional career in this situation. That hasn't always been sort of appreciated. I think that's appreciated now. So and Cheryl Cheryl met with them a couple of months ago. So I know that there's some conversation about it in the background. I think we are close to making this happen, because I think all of the folks that need to be on board are on board. So I do think that we're close.
I'm wondering if, to help with that cultural divide, if any of us could meet with any of the people who might need to understand what the benefit is to be able to help push that cultural change, and explain our stories in terms of why we think it's so important firsthand. Might, if that's helpful, I think a bunch of us would be more than happy to jump on a call for that.
Yeah, I think that would be tremendous. So let me see what I can do to make that happen. I think that would
I
be
love that
helpful.
idea. Yeah.
Because I think what is I think it's challenging. We're as a world, we see ourselves as a world-class institution. We do a lot of stuff here in many different diseases, and it's sometimes challenging for us to sort of see the other side of the coin, regardless of where we are in this healthcare system. And so I do think that, I'll just say for me, this meeting has been informative in many different ways that I didn't appreciate beforehand. So I do think that there's value in sort of hearing from you all sort of what this would mean. And it would be it really would be a new model of practice within our institution, within our cancer center. And so I think there's been some reticence in terms of, is this the right direction for us to be evolving into? And then I think in the background, there's, we have a new healthcare system or a reorganization of our healthcare system, and we're trying to also navigate that in the same time. So there are some sort of bigger issues out there, but I do think at the end of the day, if the cancer center leadership had an appreciation of what this might mean to the patients that we're taking care of, I think there's strength there.
So I think this is to make it happen, Maureen, is of course we're defining the role more and more, and I think we have a pretty good idea because now we have these pilot programs. But it's going to take a combination first of what Tia said, because there's this big emphasis of what is the sustainability? Can this nurse practitioner actually provide a service that we can bill to the insurance company, right? And I think we can make a case for at least part of that to happen, and that covers part of the cost. It's going to take perhaps some of these, I don't want to call it think tanks or grant givers who want to support this kind of effort, right? So like the 1440 Foundation, things of that sort that can say, well, we can fund part of an effort for this because this seems to be a good thing. It's going to take philanthropy because we use philanthropy for many of these sources. And it's going to take the Cancer Center to say, we are committed to this. And for that, we can make the case, but nothing is more powerful than patient advocates for it, right? So saying, I've gone through this. My family member went through this. This is key and this is very important. If you really care about the patients, and they do, because we know that they do care. This is not, this is thankfully not a for-profit institution, right? That is looking after every dime and penny. But it has to be sustainable. And I think a combination of all these things should make it happen. And like Colin, I've always been warmed up to this idea, but I'm even warmer and warmer as I hear it more happening. And we just need to go and go to the top leadership of the cancer center and of the hospital and say, let's do this. And they're probably going to have to do this for every disease center because I cannot see a patient with melanoma going through the same things or patients with breast cancer for sure going through these things. But we can set an example with a more focused program and then see what's going to happen. But it's going to take a combination of things. And I think certainly creating models where there will be a billing component will be vital because that always takes a little bit of the edge of the total cost of a good nurse practitioner. Because the other thing is, if you want to get a good person, you're going to have to compensate them properly for the job they're doing. Otherwise, they're going to be here for 6 months and say, bye, I'm going to go to somewhere else to, for better pastures.
Yeah,
We're
I'd like
close.
to,
We're
I think
close.
that's really well put, and I'd like to throw my ring in with the other patients and patient family members about really giving a compelling case for how crucial the communication component was and the strong kind of bonds that you build with the nurse practitioners that you work with in addition to your medical team is just vital. I think it's the difference between that warm and fuzzy feeling versus the frustration. So I think it is essential. So I'm happy if that's ever something that comes to be on that type of discussion and share the story and the reasons why this is an essential program to have in place.
Well,
So-
since I have the blessing of the group, we will take you up on that, but I'll let Ted move us along to the next item.
Yeah, no, thanks for passing it back to me because I'm about to pass it right back to you again, Colin. But but I'm in total agreement. And Caroline, thanks for that wonderful suggestion. I think that if Colin brings back to Cancer Center and hospital leadership that this group would be willing to talk with them, to advocate, I think that would be a really positive next step. So we'll take that as an action item. Next on the agenda is research updates. Why don't we start with the status of Colin's PO1?
Yeah, so this program project grant is a grant that we submitted initially January of last year with our colleagues at Hopkins, designed to support some clinical trials as well as some laboratory projects. Unfortunately, we didn't get it funded. We sort of resubmitted again this year. We didn't get it funded, but I think the thing that came out of it is they think our team is wonderful. They think they have no concerns about the leadership and how we have it organized. Two of the projects, so it was 4 projects. Sort of each project is individually rated or evaluated. And then there's sort of a summation that's how you get the score. So 2 of the 4 projects scored very well, and we would be pretty good in those 2 projects. And then one of the projects, we're going to sort of reorganize that, and then we're going to drop one. So I think where we are, I think we're in a good place to sort of resubmit again. It will be a new, entirely new project, but resubmit. We'll do that again in January. We're sort of reorganizing ourselves to do that. I'll show you a little bit. I guess I can show you one of the clinical trials I'm going to show you in a second is part of the grant. And the idea of this grant is to bring our scientific teams together with our laboratory, with our clinicians. And so the projects are sort of these translational projects that we're sort of, in this case, taking patient samples and evaluating those for different biologic principles. And then also we have incredible, what I will say is experimental radiology here at MGH. And so we're also using novel MRI techniques to look at different biologic parameters of patients that we're treating them. So I'm just going to show you one of these studies really quick. Oh my gosh. So this is an example of this. It's not the study that I wanted to show you, but it's an example of a study that we're doing that we have open right now. And so the concept behind this study, and this is based upon work that David Ting, who's one of our laboratory scientists, has been doing. What he's been doing is sort of looking at can we molecularly classify pancreas cancer, and does that have any impact on therapy, and what are the switches for that process as potentially the cells go from sort of one classification to another. And so this study is what we're doing is working. So we're utilizing losartan, which our group has shown has a number of different effects on the pancreas cancer biology. And Dr. Ted has a large study that he just completed that's looking at losartan in patients with localized disease. And so then it turns out that this 9-ING41, so this is another molecule that targets another pathway that's involved in the switching process. So this study is funded by the Lustgarten Foundation, and it's open. It will be open at University of Colorado, University of Washington. We're sort of started some conversation with another institution to support this study. The study that we are looking at with as part of the program project grant is this study in which patients, it has two components, but we'll talk about the latter component of it. It has a component for patients with metastatic disease and a component for patients with localized pancreas cancer, which is, where our sort of our wheelhouse is. And so this is looking at combining a drug called 973, which is going to modulate the structure of the cancer. And then this tislelizumab is a molecule. It's a molecule that turns on the immune system. So what we're trying to do here is sort of alter the structure of the cancer with this 973, and then allow for the immune cells to come in. And the unique thing about this study, this is a study that we're doing actually in collaboration with Novartis. And so when patients come, and it has a series of biopsies that we do for patients to assess their tumors. One of the things that we're doing is doing single cell RNA expression analysis. And so when these biopsies occur, a part of the biopsy goes directly to Novartis, which is across the river from MGH in Cambridge, and they are doing an analysis. And so it's going to be really cool because we're going to be able to sort of say, okay, well, the patients are having the switching or not switching. We're changing their tumor structure in different ways. And this MRI that I have sort of pictured here is a way for us to understand how we're altering not only the structure of the tumor itself, but also we can also look at some subsets of immune cells and how those immune cells are coming in and out of the tumor as we're treating the patients. And so this is actually one of the projects for the program project grant that Dr. Hong mentioned. So this is sort of an example of where we want to go. And the other thing that we're doing that I think is really cool is Tia's brother John has developed this large database will allow us to sort of put these trials and samples, sort of coordinate all that through the labs and then in the patient care. And so I think we really have a very nice foundation that we're setting up for the future. We need some unique levels of support, but I think the other thing that's really important that I've been thrilled by having come here is just the level of collaboration and the willingness of our teams to work together. It's interesting. So I was talking to one of our other scientists, Nabil Bardisi, the other day. And so I mentioned that we did this with Hopkins. So Hopkins has a weekly pancreas cancer seminar that we participate in. And one of his postdoctoral fellows was presenting, and they asked Nabil to present, to introduce that person. And since it was on a Zoom meeting, he was able to do that. And he was so tickled that we are working that closely together that we're able to do these type of things. And so we really are, I think, developing a nice integrated program that I do believe will be transformative going forward. So I think, Ted, next you're up about the Stand Up to Cancer trial and the research.
Yeah, so thank you. So as Colin said, we have completed accrual to Stand Up to Cancer, and we're sifting through right now, trying to understand the data as it comes in, and I'm taking a closer look at the analysis. I think that we are targeting GI ASCO submission, which is the end of September, to have the data sort of fully digested. And that what that would mean is that the fall in-person meeting, we'll be able to share with you our at least preliminary conclusions regarding that study. And then next on the agenda, before we actually get to the Wings of Hope event, Colin and Maureen, I was wondering if, Caroline, I don't mean to cold call you, but at a previous meeting, we had discussed the idea of having a newsletter where we would be able to share with interested patients, and also some potential opportunity for drumming up interest in philanthropy. So Caroline, if you could just give a little refresher for the group and sort of maybe what you think, if there's interest, and how do we take the next step in moving in that direction?
Sure. So what I did was I sort of created an outline of things that I thought might be relevant to patients, former existing patients, caregivers, and asked these wonderful doctors to come up with some thoughts to tie into different categories. And so we came up with a good list of items. And the breakdown really, and I think I can share, this is sort of a mock-up of just a conceptual idea in terms of what it could look like. But the idea would be sort of some kind of initial program spotlight in terms of some of the research that's going on, maybe what Dr. Weeks just talked about, and then tie in a perspective story, nutrition, since we all believe very strongly in the benefits of helping patients, caregivers, and former patients understand have some nutritional support, tie in a concept of some kind of survivor story or personal story in terms of a journey, and then any events and fundraising. So that would, tie in nicely to the Wings of Hope discussion. And so these were the categories that we thought about, and then this main story concept could then kind of tie into a longer article. And the idea would be to keep it short enough that it's digestible, short enough that from a doctor perspective, this is my biggest concern, frankly, for all of you three, is time and the amount of energy that would potentially need to go into this. But my goal would be to try and keep it at a high enough level that it doesn't take up too much extra time, but it does provide exactly what you do for all of us on this call, an update as to what's going on at MGH. I think it will do two things. One, it brings a sense of community to everybody who would receive it, even if it just starts off as a pilot. And two, I think it provides more awareness within the general population in terms of what Mass General is doing, and provides more feedback up to leadership in terms of things that you all are working on, in terms of other people reading it and bringing it back to the Cancer Center. So I'd love to continue to work on this. I think we need to start. I started to try and dive into what databases we could use and what newsletter formatting. I haven't gotten that much feedback back from Mass General, and I'm more than happy to really kind of dig in if this is something everybody wants. But it may be that we start pretty small and see how much traction we get, and then go back to the Cancer Center to ask for more, tie-in to the general brand and the hospital's activities.
Would this be a hard copy newsletter in the mail?
I think it probably not. My thought would be it's probably easier to start the pilot as a email with links. But again, that could be up for discussion. I think the hard copy would be lovely. I just don't think that funding right now would necessarily support that.
And what about just doing a dedicated Facebook page so people can give their responses, and you could build up a little community just from the responses that you get?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great idea. If that works. I don't know if there's any limitation. I think that would be great. And we could still keep some of these very specific categories, because I think these categories speak to what people are interested in hearing. But we could do that instead of a newsletter. And then it could go viral in its own way instead of us creating a pilot. That's definitely an option. That's a great idea.
This is really fantastic. Really, really great. My Latin is good, but not that.
Yeah, right. Well,
English?
I'm waiting for content.
Oh. Okay.
So I love this idea. I'm not sophisticated enough in social media to know the pros and to really understand the pros and cons of one format versus another. But I'd love to hear
Here, I can.
the rest of the group about what you think of this as well.
I think this is great.
I think this is fantastic, Aaron. It's really nice. It's much more than I would have sort of expected. And I think we certainly can make it happen and can make fresh content, with some frequency. So I am also not sophisticated on social media. I've never seen Facebook in my life or Twitter or any of those things. So I'm just a dinosaur, I guess, on those things. But you hear from a lot of people that it gets a lot of traction. And my concern when you send it as an email is people get, 300 emails a day, and it may just sort of disappear. And then that there's some older folks who may not have this sort of Facebook presence or the email presence. Just you seem to be familiar with newsletters. How much does it cost to print a thing like this? I mean, that would not exclude one or the other. I have just curious to see, like, if you were to have 200 copies of this, how much would that cost?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I did print jobs. But 200 shouldn't be too bad. I mean, I think that there are ways of doing, 200. So you could send it to some clients that you feel like that would be a better approach. And we could add, you could be surprised by the number of people who actually do have Facebook, and you could add there's a QR code that you can create that they can then click on, and then they can go to the Facebook page. So, I think I can do some research once we figure out exactly how much content we think we might put into this. Like we played around a little bit with number of word counts and whatnot, so that will factor in. But if we keep it to 3 or 2 pages or 4, I can run some numbers and we can figure out what the pricing could be, if people would like to try that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it has to be by printed, but it's just getting an idea of what it is.
Yeah, and I think it may not be bad to try and get it out there in a few different ways and see what people respond to the most. I mean, I think there's no harm in printing it and sending it, and if we think that we can check on the numbers for this initial launch, do an email and do a Facebook, and then sort of see where is the most traction.
Mm-hmm.
And from one dinosaur to another, I feel exactly like you, Carlos. And it's true that an email is pretty useless because, indeed, receiving hundreds of emails per day, I mean, that would go maybe the to read section, but then would get lost. If there's any way you could do a print and not a long one, indeed, no more than four maximum, I think 4 pages, because people would read it. I mean, if they're concerned, if it's something that's important to them, they're definitely going to read it. I don't use Facebook. I just know that it's clearly a generational thing. And
We'll get you on it.
many people
John,
have
that's my
tried,
homework
but
for the next, between
no.
now and next time.
That's
I'm
not
totally
going to
kidding.
happen. No,
I'm totally
I value my privacy much too much. But no, I mean, I think that it would be a very good idea to have even a small run, because I mean, you know your patients. I mean, you probably can guess who's using Facebook and not. But I think a multi-pronged approach and see what works. But certainly not more than 4 pages. I mean, we receive, all the different hospitals, newsletters and departments, respective departments of hospitals. And it's, it has to be very targeted for me to actually read it. And I think many people fall in the same category as far as that goes.
We
So just
tried
to
in the
clarify,
beginning.
though, oh, I was just going to say, on the Maureen suggestion of the Facebook page, it would almost be more of a website, right? So like that you would be able to go to and see content and be able to add content versus you providing personal information at Facebook. So I think that's really a kind of a question of like creating some kind of landing page where then there could be, this goes back to the community discussion you brought up too, very strongly, in terms of how do we encourage people to get connected who are gone through this journey or are going through this journey. And so a landing page that does have this ability to interact is really going to be a nice option that would dovetail nicely into what we're trying to do in terms of, 1, providing information, but 2, also promoting the program and these wonderful doctors.
Yeah, I think what you learn after a while is even the 4-page newsletter, as full as it is of wonderful information, it is a time factor, and people really have to be personally invested to read through that. What going through this for 10 years, just figuring out what people will read and respond to. A couple times a year, I send out just picture like a big postcard, not 8.5 by 11, but maybe not a little more than half of that. And it's just a mailer. And you get a lot of information on that. It could be about, you have room to talk about an upcoming event, you have room to talk about research, and then a spotlight on somebody. And then you're also directing them to that landing page that you just referred to. And something like that, it's like you have to look at it almost like a political campaign. What is going to attract them in the mail that they're going to stop and look at this and then be redirected now? They want to learn more. And so now you're directing them to that landing page where they could read more about those things that were on that card. But we found that little card a couple times a year, just saying we raised this because of this event, and spotlight on somebody going through the treatment who has something to share. You could just fit a lot, and you're giving people a taste and leaving them with wanting more instead of giving them too much and they're just overwhelmed and they don't have the time or the wherewithal to read through all of that.
Can you do me a favor? Would you mind sending me what you like, just the postcard, a few that you feel like do a good job speaking, just so I can get a sense as to how much information? Great, that'd be wonderful.
I would say as a dinosaur as well, with no social media presence, and as a both a doc and a family member up in, Yawkey 7 or London 9. There, in the old days when there were opportunities to grab a pamphlet like that while you're sitting waiting, or your family member, or maybe you didn't get the packet the NP handed out. I think it's really valuable to have multiple ways of collecting the data, and a hard pamphlet like that to take home with you, while you're in a waiting room or whatever. I think is also valuable, and just literally in the patient and family areas.
Well, we can keep playing around with it, and then when we talk to leadership about the nurse practitioner, we'll throw in another cost request.
Oh God.
No,
I
think
love
it- I
the
think it's
overall
a-
idea, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think there's many ways that we could utilize something along those lines, both in print as well as virtually. And I think it also, I heard the conversation about a web landing page, which is something that we've been discussing sort of adamantly for some time. So that's another thing that I think that also is something that we need to do better with. But I
Is
think
that
it's-
something that the MGH communications team can help with, and that then I could help work with? Or because I'm more than happy to help think through and navigate how some of this information could get on to anything that you guys might be working on, or whatever you need to help. If I can help, let me know.
Yeah.
Phil, is that something you'd be able to maybe talk with? I know that it's less development, but more on the marketing side. If you can reach out and help us figure out how do we execute on something like this?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different routes we can do for this. From the way it sounds, it almost is like, I don't know if any of you received the Everyday Amazing newsletter from the Cancer Center.
Yep.
Sort of like
Yes.
similar.
That's what I based it on.
Yeah. Okay. So that our office does produce. So
Okay.
Megan and I can regroup with our marketing communications team and just see what best next steps are in terms of from what our office can do. But that shouldn't be a problem because we do stuff like that all the time. So
That would be awesome.
In terms of branding and whatnot, we could handle that as well.
Awesome.
Okay. And then the only other question would be then landing page. Where does that fall?
So that also is something that marketing communications could manage as well.
Okay.
At least the
Awesome.
setup, and then Megan or I, or if you would like to take the reins as well, we can make it something that you can easily access as well.
I am more than happy, guys, to help out and get this moving. Since you guys have to take charge of patients, like I can help with this. I just need to know that everybody wants to do it, and that I know who to work with and how to proceed. I'm not the expert, but I can project manage anything. So I can definitely help.
Absolutely. So Megan and I will debrief on this, and we'll be in touch with you, Caroline, if that's okay, if you're comfortable on next steps.
Sounds great.
Great.
And who would the audience be that would receive this?
Right.
Well,
So we
for
talked
one
about
thing-
that last time. I mean, so last time we talked about how deep we could go and who the audience would be. And the discussion with Megan last time was we should start with a pilot and show what the reception is, and have Fernando, Colin, and Ted come up with sort of a list of people that they felt made sense to send it out to. I would love it to be deeper as quickly as possible, but I don't know how much access we have to the Mass General database and how much we can move forward. Because if you think about all those people who are getting second consults or living throughout the nation, like that's what you want to get this out very broadly nationwide if we can, is my suggestion.
Yeah, I think
And nothing stops us. Nothing stops us because we have lists of patients with pancreatic cancer. We have their family members.
But the question is, how much are we allowed to? How deep are we allowed to use those lists? And does Mass General have any ownership of how that goes out and gets managed? And maybe that's a Bell question.
So as a physician, if you had a relationship with a patient or with a family, you're allowed to contact that family member. So that's not an issue, because we have a lot of doctors and a lot of sort of potential patients for do that. And then from there, how much it grows, I don't know how you do that,
But you're not trying to keep it just in-house. You want it to be something that goes beyond the borders of just Mass General, right?
Yes,
probably.
Ideally, yes.
I would say ideally, and I think it begs a bigger question, which is I was actually, as we've been talking, I've been looking at the MGH, there's an MGH Pancreas program website, but what we really need is a website that's sort of more comprehensive, including our scientists and all that stuff. And there are some challenges around that with respect to branding and MGB that we'd have to navigate, but it's something that we've had some conversations around. I think it's been a little bit challenging to make it happen, but I think with the support that we're getting from this group, there's new impetus to do that, and then I also think the team is more cohesive to make that work as well. So I do think that we should pursue it for sure, and it'd be like open, like as you're sort of alluding to, Maureen. It's out there for the world to view and do.
Because not even the institutions, but a lot of the like Luck's Garden and a lot of the organizations that specialize in pancreatic cancer, they have whether it's a website, and all of you are talking about being dinosaurs. You're on a Zoom call, and Facebook is a click below that, so it's not that difficult. But all of these groups have their own site, and they send out notices, they send out information, and I think certainly what you're proposing here should be just as well known as theirs.
Not agree with you more. So I think we can work with Belle and Megan and to see if we can make this happen. But I do think it's an important next step too.
Yeah, I love this idea, and Caroline, thanks so much for even just that mock-up. I think really helped to see the visual and what the possibilities can be. But I think a way to communicate with, I had originally been thinking that it was really an opportunity to keep our patients and families and therefore potential philanthropy connected to us. But you're right, if it becomes also a vehicle for broader outreach, I think that would be tremendous.
I mean, you could really do both, and it strengthens both. One feeds into the other, and now you're building such a coalition. But the worst thing is just to confine it to one audience, and all that effort and work really, you're just missing such a great potential opportunity.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Hi everyone. I was late to the party, but I'm I was under the care of Dr. and still am at Cadan 3 years post Whipple, and doing very well thanks to MGH and team. But I was just gonna kind of back up what Maureen had said. I think the more communication you can drive to the website, the more, that can be the newsletter, more informational gathering, but they can drive to the website that might potentially help increase the philanthropy aspect of it as well.
And to, you need to educate, not you need to, but you learn that people want to know how to get involved. They want to know how to give and to donate. And these vehicles are just excellent for that.
Right.
Awesome. All right, so Bill, I guess for next steps, you'll be connecting with Caroline, and then I'm figuring out what the process will be to move this forward.
Yes. So ideally, with fall coming up and whatnot, I will aim to get a meeting with our marketing team for next week, and then touch base with you on next steps, and let you know maybe it would be worth having you join a meeting with them. That would be great. But I'll be in touch.
And Maureen, I don't know how much you want to be clued in and tied in, but you've got a lot going on. But I may tap you for
I'm happy to sit in and offer anything that I possibly can. The days I can't, I can't, but
yeah,
absolutely.
you've got a lot of knowledge, and so I I think that just your insight would be helpful in terms of just distribution and audience and,
Happy to do
That-
so.
okay.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you. Why don't we, Colin, Wings of Hope, next, within just, well, it's hard to believe we're less than 2 months away from it now.
Oh, my God.
Jeez. Boy, that
Yeah.
went fast.
So Maureen is hosting. The Wings of Hope is her foundation, and she's historically supported the University of Colorado. So we've known each other for a long time now, going on a decade. Dinosaurs growing old together. Anyway, so the Wings of Hope event is going to be October 22nd. It'll be structured the way that she has structured it in Colorado. And I'll let her talk more about the specifics of the event.
All right, well, when Dr. Weeks asked me to do this, you know, the first thing you think of is, gee, what a great idea, of course. But we are now in the busiest time. We just had a sold out golf tournament a few weeks ago. We're having another one next week, and then our benefit in September, and then the Boston one in October, and then another one here in November, and then a walk and a run in November. So it is kind of crazy this year. It will never be this bad, but we're going to do it. So the Wings of Hope in October, first time doing it, off to a very slow start, but we're going to pick up speed here in the next 60 days before it happens. And it's really the whole point of this is to raise awareness, and almost like what you said, Carolyn, and what the whole point of a newsletter is just to shine a spotlight on what this whole effort is and make connections at this event, have people connect that they probably never would have before, and inform people that, because a lot of people come to these events that have absolutely no personal connection to the disease, and yet they're coming and they leave with a completely different knowledge base as to not only the disease, but what is happening in their own backyard in terms of treatment of the disease and the research. So the event and Wings of Hope is 100% all volunteer, nonprofit. Every dollar raised goes right to the research. And so the template of the event, most of you know, the first hour is food and drink for people to socialize and connect with one another. And then a presentation, which will start with the physicians giving a very, very brief overview of what's going on, why we're all here. And then a video will be shown spotlighting one or two of those physicians and a patient. And then in the middle, we're going to have a live auction just to not change the mood, but also add that element. And that's really the giving piece of the evening. Even though there will be auction items, the way the auctioneer structures this is that there will be like a paddle raise portion where people really end up donating a lot. Believe me, I was a non-believer in this in the beginning, but when I saw how successful it is, it's hard to say no to that. And then after the auction at this event, my brother is the featured speaker, and he's quite well known. He was shot down in Vietnam and left for dead, told he'd never walk again, let alone fly. And he came back to fly the SR-71, which is the world's highest and fastest flying jet ever made. So it's a very compelling story. And the events I do here every year, I always try to find some, again, getting back to it doesn't matter why you're here at the event. I always wanted some sort of inspirational message that people leave with for whatever they're going through. It doesn't even have to be medical, but they're leaving in a whole different mindset and frame to deal with whatever they're dealing with. So that is the structure of the evening. And we have some goals as to how much we want to raise, but you know, this is the first time out. And I think if we can do these next 60 days right, the main thing is in the publicity, is in the word of mouth on the whole thing. And that's how you really lay the foundation. The first event I had, I was just stunned at what it did. And it was just like a launching pad. It was, I had no concept to do it every year. I just thought, okay, let's do one. And it just propelled everything from there if it's done right and, for all the right reasons and in the right way. And so that's what I intend for this one. I don't know. I know a few of you are signed up to come, but with this advisory group, I would personally like to invite all of you not only to come, but to bring a couple of guests with you. Tell them that they are your personal guests, but just email me with the names of the people that you would personally like to invite and have attend. So if you don't mind doing that, we need to have their names on the registration list. But, as part of this group, certainly wanted to, if 6-8 people that you think would benefit from coming to this, just invite them, tell them they're your guests, and then just give me the names, and we'd love to have them at that event. So that in a nutshell is the structure of it. Do you have any questions? Or I don't know how much we've talked about this over the past, if you already are up to speed on everything, but it should be an incredible evening. I never know what to expect. You're always a nervous wreck because you have to worry about a million things going on at once. But what happens at these events is just so extraordinary. And the connections made, the things that are brought out. And I know I've gone over this before, but just at our last event, last September, I mean, we had people just because they're very informal. There's nothing formal about this. I mean, yes, we have a structure, we have a program, but there comes a moment where people are, I always invite 1 or 2 people to really share what they're going through. And honestly, it just leads to last year, this woman raised her hand and said, could I share my story? Well, that's never happened before. What do? You can't just stand there and say, well, no, we're not giving you the microphone. So of course we give them the microphone. That led into, I can't even tell you what that has led to this past year, but it also led to one woman giving $350,000 because she was so taken with the whole concept of what was going on that evening. So again, if you just stay focused, in which we all are, on what we're doing and why we're doing it, my point is you just never know the extraordinary things that are going to come out of these situations. You don't want to get it so formal where you're nitpicking every single thing to the point of absurd insanity. You just want it to be a very meaningful, purposeful life event. My whole foundation was, I just needed to find meaning and purpose after losing 2 family members. And in a way, that's what these events have become. You just are trying to find meaning and purpose, and now share that with other people, whether they're going through that same journey or other journeys of their own. And somehow it just works. It leaves you speechless what happens if it's done right. So we're trying to make it that way. And so again, please feel free to invite people you think would benefit from this as your guest, and just email me who you'd like to bring, and we'd love to have them.
Sounds great, Maureen. Belle, how many people fit in the Charlestown lobby where it's going to take place?
I'm not positive, but it's a decent amount. I think it's about 200, Maureen, 250.
Well, we have it set for 270.
Okay.
That's including the volunteers, including every single person that night. We're at 270. So, and that's a good number. If we hit that, I'll be very, very thrilled. So, you know, that's the challenge right now to fill that venue. And so even if at the last moment we have to scramble and just start, you know, inviting groups or whatnot just to come and fill that place, you know, we'll do that. But that it's 270 right now.
Great.
And so also what I will do in follow up with the video recording is send the invitation sponsorship packet and all of the materials we have for Wings of Hope. If there's anyone in your network you think might be interested in attending, and for you to also RSVP if you're able to make it.
Right.
If I can just speak to the event and really like her brother's talk is, I don't know how it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, and as she sort of gave you a little bit of the story of her brother, it's inspirational in so many ways. And if you go on the website, you'll actually see a picture of my son when he's a little boy with her brother, who is now at the Air Force Academy trying to be a pilot, sort of in his footsteps. So it really is an inspirational evening. And the reason why I asked Maureen to do this was, you know, we've talked a lot about this idea of community around our program and sort of developing this unified approach. And I would say the University of Colorado really benefits from that, and sort of the work that Maureen has done is really seeing it from afar. I'm kind of jealous because it wasn't that way when I was there. But it's, you know, it's really developed into something that's really integral into their program and to funding like their seed grant funding for research projects. And then the community that's around it is just simply amazing. So I think it will be a very impactful event for us if we can get, you know, the people in the room and people and sort of enjoy and see what all this is, right? So I'm very excited about the evening and look forward to seeing you all there.
Ditto that.
I think it's going to be amazing. Really looking forward to it.
Yes.
But remember, invite some people. So just pass along their names.
We're already doing that. Megan has reached out to us, and we're going through lists of patients because, of course, and patients are family members of patients and people who have a particular interest in pancreatic cancer, and you know, we got to make it a success.
Exactly. And really think outside the box. You might have relations with people not even related to the medical world. You might know some of your local representatives or whoever you do business with. Feel free to invite them. I mean, this is how you lay a foundation with people from all different elements, because heaven knows those people that are coming with no personal contact to this disease, the very next year, it's a whole different story. And a lot of people are very enlightened, and you want to educate them what is happening right in their backyard in terms of treatment and research. So don't just confine it to the patients and families and the Mass General family, just people that you know and who are doing great things in other fields. Feel free to invite them. That's what makes a great audience, and that's what makes it so compelling. Those and Colin could tell you, I mean, there were events that we had, you know, politicians and the physicians and the patients and artists, and I mean, it was just a smattering of just the most, it was such an eclectic group, and it just all, everybody just wanted to hang on to one another, and they just didn't want the evening to end. So just invite anybody and everybody that you think would get something from an evening like that.
Maureen, have invitations gone out? And if they have, was it by email?
I think that there was a deadline. I think Megan or Belle, you could probably speak to that.
Yes, so we are sending the invitations, the official ones, which will be both via email and print, the second week of September.
Okay,
So you should also receive an official email or mail invitation. It's everyone in the network that has a connection to MGH, a patient connection, or has given money of a certain threshold over the past couple of years. So there's a network that we're reaching out to in particular, but we're just hoping to continue to spread the word as well.
okay, thank you.
And if any of you happen to know anyone connected with the military, or aviation, I mean, that would be just a normal, you mention that plane to them and they kind of go crazy. It has like a little cult following. So again, just use your imagination as to who would benefit from this.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right. So in the fall, I think we're all contemplating whether we are ready to congregate in person. I know for some of you that means a little bit of travel, but we've been at this with the Pancreatic Advisory Group now for about 1.5 years or so. And we keep talking about having an in-person meeting, and I think that we've all have been outside the hospital, at least. Life feels a little more normal than it did before. I know that I've done some travel at this point, so we want to get the pulse on how everyone feels about maybe getting together for the next meeting and having dinner together. So I would be curious to hear what people think.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Well, it sounds like we're in person for the next meeting, so we should probably, out of courtesy for everyone's busy schedules, get it on the books a few months ahead of time. But I can't wait to see everybody in person and meet some of you for the first time in person as well. So so I think we all have something to look forward to now.
Yes.
And also, for those of you who are unable, Maureen, I know you probably are unable to attend in person. We can figure out having a virtual component as well.
Well, depending on when it is. I mean, I am just booked solid to November just because of all the events coming up. But if it's after that, I could certainly make the trip.
Great.
If we pick a
Thank
good
you.
enough restaurant, Bill.
There you go.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you everyone so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Soon. Enjoy the rest of your
Thank you.
summer.
Nice
Take
to
care,
meet you.
All
everybody.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good to
Bye-bye.
see